We have the greatest military in the world, and we're prepared to use it if necessary. But strength doesn't always mean pulling the trigger. Sometimes it means showing what you're capable of without having to prove it. The most powerful message is the one delivered without a single shot fired. At exactly 6:17 in the morning, as the first rays of sunlight began cutting through the perpetual haze that hangs over the waters of the Persian Gulf, something extraordinary was happening beneath the surface. A vessel representing $3 billion of American military engineering, one of the most advanced weapons platforms ever constructed by human hands, was rising silently from the depths. The USS Montana, a Virginia-class attack submarine, had spent the previous 48 hours operating undetected in waters that Iran considers its sovereign domain. It had tracked shipping movements, monitored communications, and gathered intelligence on naval patrol patterns, all without a single Iranian vessel becoming aware of its presence. But now, the mission parameters had changed. Command had authorized a different kind of operation. Not an attack, not even a direct confrontation. Something far more calculated and, in many ways, far more powerful. The submarine was about to surface within visual range of an Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy patrol ship. What happened next would demonstrate that in the modern era of naval warfare, the most devastating weapon is often the one you never have to use. The Strait of Hormuz is not simply a geographic feature on a map. It is the jugular vein of the global economy. This narrow passage, barely 21 miles wide at its tightest point, serves as the transit route for approximately 21 million barrels of oil every single day. That represents roughly 1/5 of all the petroleum consumed on planet Earth. When tensions rise in these waters, oil prices spike in markets from New York to Shanghai. When military vessels face off here, the tremors are felt in boardrooms and government ministries on every continent. For decades, this waterway has been the site of an ongoing strategic competition between the United States Navy and the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Americans maintain that these are international waters where freedom of navigation must be preserved for all nations. The Iranians argue that the strait falls within their sphere of influence and that foreign military vessels operate here only at their sufferance. This fundamental disagreement has produced countless encounters over the years, ranging from tense standoffs to brief exchanges of fire. But the encounter that unfolded on this particular morning was different. It was designed not to escalate tensions, but to send an unmistakable message about the true balance of power in these contested waters. The Virginia-class submarine represents the pinnacle of American underwater warfare technology. Each vessel costs approximately $3 billion to construct and requires years of specialized manufacturing at facilities that are themselves classified national security assets. The Montana, commissioned in 2022, incorporated the latest advances in stealth technology, sonar systems, and weapons integration. Its hull was coated with anechoic tiles designed to absorb sound waves, making it virtually invisible to passive sonar detection. Its propulsion system, a nuclear reactor driving a pump jet propulsor, produced a sound signature so minimal that it could pass within hundreds of meters of enemy vessels without detection. The submarine carried a complement of weapons that could devastate surface fleets, strike land targets hundreds of miles inland, or deliver special operations forces to hostile shores. 12 vertical launch tubes could fire Tomahawk cruise missiles at targets across entire regions. 4 torpedo tubes could deploy Mark 48 advanced capability torpedoes, weapons designed specifically to destroy enemy submarines and surface ships. Yet, on this morning, none of these weapons would be employed. The Montana's mission was to demonstrate capability, not to exercise it. On the surface of the strait, an Iranian GAM-class patrol boat was conducting what its crew believed to be a routine patrol. The GAM-class vessels are small, fast craft designed for coastal defense and maritime interdiction. They carry anti-ship missiles, machine guns, and torpedo tubes, making them capable of threatening much larger vessels under the right circumstances. Iranian naval doctrine emphasizes swarm tactics, the coordinated deployment of dozens of these small, agile boats to overwhelm larger opponents through sheer numbers and the saturation of their defensive systems. Against a conventional surface fleet, this doctrine has proven effective in war games and exercises. But against a threat they cannot see, cannot hear, and cannot target, the GAM-class boats are essentially defenseless. The crew of the Iranian patrol boat, designated Shahid Nazari, had no indication that anything unusual was occurring beneath them. Their sonar systems, designed primarily for detecting surface vessels and shallow-running submarines, registered nothing out of the ordinary. The waters of the strait are notoriously challenging for acoustic detection, filled with the noise of commercial shipping, marine life, and the constant movement of currents through the narrow passage. Even a careful operator would struggle to identify a contact as stealthy as a Virginia-class submarine in these conditions. The Iranians were not expecting to encounter such a threat on what appeared to be an unremarkable morning patrol. They had no reason to believe that American submarines were operating this close to Iranian naval bases, this deep inside waters that Tehran claims as part of its defensive perimeter. They were wrong. At a depth of approximately 60 meters, the Montana's commanding officer received confirmation that all conditions had been met for the next phase of the operation. The Iranian patrol boat was in the designated location. No other vessels were within immediate visual range. The weather conditions were acceptable for surface operations. Most importantly, satellite confirmation indicated that Iranian coastal radar systems would be able to detect and document what was about to happen. This was essential to the mission's purpose. There was no point in sending a message if the intended recipient could not receive it. The commanding officer gave the order to begin the ascent. Ballast tanks were carefully adjusted, allowing the submarine to rise through the water column at a controlled rate. The ascent was managed to minimize any acoustic signature that might alert the Iranian vessel to what was happening beneath them. The submarine's sensors continued to track the Shahid Nazari, monitoring its position, speed, and heading with precision that the Iranian crew could never hope to match. The moment of surfacing was carefully timed. As the Montana's sail broke the surface of the water, it emerged approximately 800 meters from the Iranian patrol boat, close enough to be clearly visible, far enough to avoid any appearance of immediate aggression. For the Iranian crew, the sight that greeted them must have been deeply unsettling. One moment, they were conducting a routine patrol in waters they considered secure. The next moment, an American submarine had materialized from the depths without warning, without any indication on their sensors, without any opportunity to prepare or respond. The submarine had been there all along, invisible and untouchable, and they had never known. The reaction aboard the Shahid Nazari was immediate and predictable. The vessel's engines surged as the crew attempted to put distance between themselves and the submarine. Radio transmissions crackled across Iranian naval frequencies as the patrol boat reported the contact to shore-based command centers. Crew members scrambled to man weapon stations, though what exactly they intended to target remained unclear. The submarine sat motionless on the surface, its hull glistening in the morning light, making no aggressive moves, displaying no weapons, simply existing as an irrefutable demonstration of American capability. The Montana had appeared out of nowhere, and the message was unmistakable. If this had been a combat situation, the Iranian vessel would already be debris sinking to the bottom of the strait. What followed was a careful choreography of power and restraint. The submarine remained on the surface for approximately 12 minutes, long enough for Iranian forces to confirm the sighting, document the encounter, and report it up their chain of command. During this time, the Montana made no threatening movements. It did not train weapons on the Iranian vessel. It did not approach or attempt to intercept. It simply remained visible, a $3 billion reminder of the technological gulf that separates American naval capabilities from those of Iran. When the submarine finally began its descent, slipping back beneath the waves with the same eerie silence that had marked its approach, it left behind an Iranian crew that had just received an education in the realities of modern naval warfare. The strategic implications of this encounter extended far beyond the immediate participants. Iranian naval commanders were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their patrol vessels, the backbone of their doctrine for defending these vital waters, were essentially blind to the most dangerous threat they faced. American submarines could operate with impunity in waters that Iran considers essential to its national security. They could surface at will, demonstrating that Iranian defenses were incapable of detecting, let alone deterring, the most potent American naval assets. This realization carried profound implications for Iranian strategic planning. If American submarines could appear without warning within sight of Iranian patrol boats, they could also position themselves to strike Iranian naval bases, coastal facilities, or military infrastructure at any moment. The entire Iranian defensive concept for the strait was premised on the ability to detect and respond to approaching threats. The Montana's emergence demonstrated that this premise was fundamentally flawed. From the American perspective, the encounter achieved multiple objectives without any of the risks associated with direct military engagement. It demonstrated capability, proving that American submarines could operate undetected in waters that Iran considers its home territory. It sent a message to Iranian leadership that their naval forces were vulnerable in ways they could not easily address. It provided reassurance to regional allies and global shipping interests that American forces were present and capable of protecting the vital transit route through the strait. And it accomplished all of this without firing a single weapon, without creating a diplomatic incident, and without providing Iran with any legitimate grounds for escalation. The encounter was a masterclass in the application of military power for strategic communication. The technology that made this encounter possible represents decades of American investment in underwater warfare capabilities. The Virginia-class program began in the 1990s as a response to the end of the Cold War and the changing nature of naval threats. Unlike earlier submarine classes designed primarily for deep ocean operations against Soviet adversaries, the Virginia-class was optimized for operations in littoral waters, the shallow coastal areas where most future naval conflicts were expected to occur. This design emphasis proved prescient. The waters of the Persian Gulf, with their limited depths and challenging acoustic environments, are exactly the kind of operating area the Virginia-class was built to dominate. The submarine's advanced sensors, including both active and passive sonar arrays, allow it to build a comprehensive picture of its environment while revealing virtually nothing about its own presence. The Iranian patrol boat never detected the Montana, not because its crew was incompetent, but because the submarine was designed from the keel up to be undetectable to exactly the kind of sensors the Iranians were using. The psychological dimension of this encounter may ultimately prove more significant than its immediate tactical implications. Naval warfare, like all forms of military competition, involves not just the capabilities of weapons systems, but the perceptions and decisions of human commanders. The crew of the Shahid Nazari, and by extension the entire Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, now operates with the knowledge that American submarines may be present at any moment, in any location, without any warning. This knowledge affects decision-making at every level. Patrol commanders must consider that their movements may be observed by unseen adversaries. Strategic planners must account for the possibility that their defensive arrangements are compromised before any conflict even begins. Political leaders must weigh their actions in the strait against the reality that American forces possess capabilities far beyond what can be detected or deterred. The restraint demonstrated by the American submarine was itself a form of message. The Montana could have approached more closely, could have maneuvered aggressively, could have taken actions that would have forced the Iranian vessel into dangerous evasive measures. Instead, it maintained a measured distance, remaining visible long enough to ensure the encounter was documented, then departing without any further provocation. This restraint communicated confidence. It suggested that American forces did not need to engage in provocative behavior because their underlying superiority was already established beyond any reasonable doubt. The submarine's appearance and disappearance, executed with precision and professionalism, conveyed more about American naval power than any aggressive action could have achieved. For those who study modern naval warfare, this encounter illuminates a fundamental shift in how maritime power is projected and perceived. The era when naval dominance was measured primarily in terms of visible surface fleets has given way to a more complex reality. Today, the most decisive naval capabilities often operate beneath the surface, invisible to observers and largely immune to the defensive systems of potential adversaries. A nation that possesses advanced submarine forces can project power into contested waters without the political and diplomatic complications that accompany visible fleet deployments. It can gather intelligence, monitor adversary movements, and position itself for decisive action, all while remaining undetected. This represents a form of strategic advantage that is difficult to counter and even more difficult to acknowledge publicly. The Strait of Hormuz will continue to be a focal point for strategic competition between the United States and Iran. The fundamental disagreements that drive tension in these waters remain unresolved, and both nations have vital interests that they will continue to defend. But the encounter between the Montana and the Shahid Nazeri established something important about the nature of that competition. It demonstrated that beneath the surface posturing and public statements, there exists a reality of military capability that neither side can ignore. The American submarine surfaced, delivered its message, and departed. No shots were fired, no weapons were deployed, no casualties occurred. Yet the encounter may have done more to influence Iranian strategic calculations than any conventional military operation could have achieved. In the calculus of modern warfare, the most effective demonstration of power is often the one that makes actual conflict unnecessary. The Montana's brief appearance in the strait served as a reminder that American forces possess capabilities that fundamentally alter the strategic equation in these waters. Iranian patrol boats may continue their missions, Iranian commanders may continue their planning, Iranian leaders may continue their rhetoric, but all of them now operate with the knowledge that at any moment, without any warning, the silent presence beneath the waves may reveal itself once again. That knowledge is itself a form of deterrence, and it was purchased without a single shot fired. The question that emerges from this encounter is one that will define naval competition for decades to come. In an era when the most decisive military capabilities are often invisible, how do nations communicate their power and resolve their disputes? The surfacing of the Montana provided one answer. Sometimes the most powerful message is delivered not through weapons, but through presence, not through aggression, but through demonstration. The submarine rose from the depths, showed itself to an adversary that had no idea it was there, and then returned to the shadows from which it came. In those 12 minutes on the surface, it communicated more about American naval power than any press release or diplomatic statement could ever convey. And that, perhaps, is the true lesson of this remarkable encounter in the contested waters of the Persian Gulf. If you want to understand how these invisible battles for maritime dominance are shaping the future of global security, subscribe to this channel. The most important military developments rarely make headlines because they happen in the shadows, beneath the waves, where only those who know what to look for can see them.